Another great example of white's potential in this ending was the game Shomoev-Andreikin, which went quite similarly to the game Dreev-Movsisyan immediately into the ending. After the well-known moves d5, now knight f3, as I said, probably a more accurate move order, trying to avoid complications. After c5, so takes b6, bishop g5, bishop a6, queen a4. Black played immediately c5. The same idea as in the game Dreev-Movsisyan. Here, after queen d7, queen c2, queen c6 does not work quite as well, because the white rook is still on a1 and can be developed to c1 in one go, as opposed to the game Dreev-Movsisyan, where the rook had to go to d1 and then back to c1, and I think this would be to certain whites' advantage. So in this position, lots of moves have been tried, and after a while black came up with c5, and this was considered to be more or less equal. In this particular game, Shomoev also demonstrated that also in this ending, white still keeps some sort of a pull. dc, bc, rook c1. A very important moment. Usually white would go rook d1 because it looks nicer to keep the rook on the d file, and then to use the square d2 to protect the pawn on b2. But as we already saw in the game of Dreev, the rook is actually better placed on c2, and the knight later goes to d2, and white obtains an extremely harmonious setup. I mean, now it looks very natural, but this was actually missed by many top players who were going rook d1 almost automatically. In this game, Shomoev played rook c1, and after queen b6 takes rook c2, turned out that black is not able to solve all his problems yet. So rook d8, e3, and bishop f1, rook f1. We see that we got this structure once again, and but now without bishops. The white king on e1 is feeling sufficiently safe, and also the knight coming to d2 will probably finish any counterplay black might have on the d file. In the meanwhile, black's king on g8 is also not ideally safe, and I think it is safe to evaluate this position already as slightly better for white. It's very instructive to see how the game continued. Black played knight d7, king e2. White needs the second rook in the fight as well. g5 and f5, and now white opened some new prospects for his pieces with g4. White is trying also to use the g file, to use the activity of the queen to create some new threats on the king side. And after several moves, king f8, rook d1, white's pressure was sufficiently strong so that black was tempted to exchange queens, and we got a classical ending where white is actually slightly better due to the same ability to go rook c2, knight to d2, and fix the pawn on c5 forever. In this particular case, also the fact that the g-pawns got exchanged in a slightly unusual manner actually creates additional difficulties for black. Because of the white's greater activity, he's much more likely to be able to use the weakness of the h7 pawn. So let's see how the game continued. King e8, rook c2, rook b6, knight d2. White is trying to get the ideal structure. b3, as we said, extremely important for this structure to get this combination of pieces, knight d2 and pawn on b3. And now black doesn't have counterplay and might or might not be able to save the game even with ideal play. Now the weakness of the pawn on h7 is beginning to tell. He felt forced to go e5 to use the rook for the defense. Rook h4, h6, another rook comes to c4. Now we see both whites' rooks are very active, and after the exchange of one of them, knight c4, we see white's pieces are in ideal position. The knight is stronger than its counterpart. The same can be said about the rook, and the white king has chances of also being nicely activated in the center. The game continued. King e7, rook h5, rook e6, f3, king d3. White showed an extremely good technique here, and after a long fight, black came very close, but at the end of the day he still could not save this endgame. And once again white showed the potential which he has in this kind of endgame, and in general this endgames are proving to be more and more difficult for black. Another great example of this we will see in our next game, where Ivanchuk in a quite brilliant positional game outplayed Morozevich, and I think this will be the last game on this DVD.